What if every ink on Jimin's body holds a heartbreak, a secret, a story he could never say out loud? Could the tattoos you've seen 100 times actually reveal the one thing he's always hidden from ARMY? Like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dive, emotional stories behind the BTS members, silent gestures and secrets. What do you think Jimin's tattoos truly mean? Let's talk about. He never needed to say a word, not when his body had already become a diary. And yet, for years, ARMY only caught glimpses of ink under sleeves, of numbers dancing at his wrist, of crescent moons cascading down a back glimpsed under stage lights. They thought they saw everything, but they didn't, not really. Because what if every one of Jimin's tattoos was a confession he could never voice? What if the number 13 inked permanently into his wrist was more than just a date? What if it marked the beginning of pain, the moment innocence ended, the split second when the world stopped being simple and began being BTS? In this story, for the first time, we dare to ask, what was Jimin trying to tell us without ever opening his mouth? The camera never flinches. It captures everything: the curve of his smile, the dip of his shoulder, the tattoos that come into view only when he forgets they're showing, and yet, no camera has ever managed to film the tears that came before the tattoos. Those are ours to imagine, and so, we begin not at the start of his career, but at the beginning of his pain. Because somewhere along the path, from Bizen boy to global icon, Jimin stopped hiding his truth in lyrics and started etching it into his skin. The 13 on his wrist, some say it's about BTS's debut date, June 13, 2013. But there's something defiant in the way it sits there, dark and bold, as if to challenge the world. Yes, it's a date, but it's my date. You'll never know what it means to me. What happened on that date? Was it the birth of a dream, or the death of a simpler life, or perhaps both at once? And then there's the delicate youth near his ear, almost hidden, as if whispered rather than shouted. Isn't that what youth is? Fleeting, precious, something you only appreciate once it's already fading. Why would he tattoo that word in a place so easily missed unless it was meant for those who look closer, for those who listen to the silences between his words? For ARMY. But youth fades just like trust, like innocence. And maybe that's why he balanced it with forever scrawled on the opposite arm. Young forever. A contradiction, a hope, a lie, or was it a promise? One he made to himself while staring into a mirror at 3 a.m. when no one was watching and he was just Park Jimin, not Jimin of BTS. Yet, there are tattoos even harder to explain, and those are always the ones that hurt the most. Take the crescent moons down his back, each phase of the moon a different part of himself, full, new, waning, broken. Do they reflect his cycles of emotional turmoil, his transformation from the boy who doubted himself to the man who still does but sings anyway? Under every spotlight, Jimin gives us his best, but under every moon, he reclaims the parts of himself he lost. And what about the tiny, inconspicuous 7 on his finger? It's the simplest mark, and yet possibly the most emotional. It's for BTS, yes, for the 7, but could it also be for the 7 promises, 7 betrayals, 7 years of pressure, of expectation, of carrying the dreams of millions while often forgetting his own? He lifts that finger in photos like a silent signal: I'm still here, we're still us. But is that really what he feels, or is it what he needs us to believe? And then the loudest tattoo of all, Nevermind, blazoned across his ribs, as if screaming the words he could never say. How many times has Jimin whispered that phrase to himself in hotel rooms between tour? Never mind the pain, never mind the doubt, never mind the love that can't be named, never mind the longing that surfaces every time the lights go out and he's alone with his thoughts. But ARMY never forgot. They looked, they listened, and some of them saw, some of them noticed the shift. The moment he stopped covering his tattoos and started letting them speak. The moment he went from hiding pain to honoring it. Because in a world that demands perfection, Jimin carved his imperfections into permanence. They say tattoos are a form of rebellion, maybe, but for Jimin, they're more than rebellion, they're survival. They're the silent I love yous he couldn't say, the unsent letters, the apology he never received, the grief he never got to grieve, the celebration of self in a world that asked him to be someone else. Look closer and you'll see some of the tattoos fade faster than others. Some are newer, bolder, still healing, just like Jimin, still healing, still bold, still fading in and out of the spotlight, like the moon phases down his spine. And maybe that's the most beautiful thing about all this, that he chose to let us see, that he trusted ARMY enough to show us his rawest self, because trust, for someone who has been watched and judged and praised and picked apart since he was a teenager, is no small thing. So the next time you see that 13, or that quiet moon sliver, or the word never mind, etched over his ribs like armor, remember, you're not just seeing a tattoo, you're seeing a story, a struggle, a scream he kept inside too long, a dream too big for his chest to hold. And maybe you'll wonder, like so many others do, what else is he trying to say? What haven't we seen yet? What does the next tattoo mean? Maybe someday, Jimin will sit down and explain them all. Or maybe he already has. Not with words, but with ink. Maybe he's just tired of staying silent. Maybe, for a long time, he believed ARMY only loved the perfect version of him. The one who smiled effortlessly. The one who danced with flawless grace. The one who hit every note without cracking. But slowly, painfully, beautifully, he realized something powerful. ARMY didn't just love the polished, untouchable idol. They loved Park Jimin, the one who sometimes trembled, who sometimes broke, who sometimes disappeared in the shadows of his own expectations. And perhaps that's when he made the decision to stop hiding behind polished images and start revealing his truth, not in interviews, not in lyrics, but in ink. Each tattoo became a turning point, not decoration, but declaration. Do you remember the first time? Nevermind was spotted scrawled across his ribcage. The world stopped. ARMY held their breath. Some were stunned. Some were moved to tears. Because Nevermind isn't just a random word. It's the intro to a BTS track once performed by Sugo's song about resilience, pain, and defiance. Did Jimin tattoo it because of the song? Or because he lived it? Then came the moons, not just one, but an entire face cycle, running down his spine. You wouldn't notice them unless you were looking closely. You wouldn't understand them unless you knew what it meant to change constantly, to be full and empty at once, to shine in parts and fade in others. The moons aren't there for beauty. They're there because Jimin is the moon, always shifting, always orbiting the light, even when he disappears into the dark. His phases reflect his internal war, the battle between vulnerability and strength, exposure and retreat, and the small 7 on his finger, the tiniest of all, but the loudest in meaning. 7 members, 7 souls, 7 lives entwined, but also perhaps 7 sleepless nights, 7 missed birthdays, 7 versions of himself that were lost along the way. He didn't draw that 7 to remind us of BTS, he drew it to remind himself of who he started with, of who he still stands for. Then we return to the 13, a number, a date, an origin, June 13th, 2013. But maybe it's not just about the group's debut. Maybe it was the last day. Jimin lived for himself, and the first day he began living for the world. It's the line that split his life in half. One side, anonymity, the other, eternity. Look at how it sits on his wrist, exposed, bold, defiant. He's not hiding anymore, none of it. Youth and forever written on his arms, two words that contradict each other, yet belong together. Young forever, a cry against time, a hope against reality, a silent scream for all the moments he couldn't reclaim, and all the memories he refuses to let go of. But we may never truly know what went through his mind as he inked each symbol. Did he cry when the needle touched skin for the first time? Did he hesitate? Or did he feel free? Because for someone like Jimin, tattoos are not trends. They're truths. They're pieces of a puzzle he's been solving his whole life, a puzzle named identity. And what we see now is not a rebellious idol flaunting ink. What we see is a man reclaiming his story, piece by piece. No press release, no caption, just scars made beautiful, pain turned poetic, silence turned into ink. Now, ARMY sees a different Jimin,